Star Trek: Strange New Worlds has changed two's most famous running joke. Star Trek: Strange New Worlds may be rooted in nostalgia, but few modern Trek shows have been as bold about reinterpreting the legacy of the original series. While the prequel proudly embraces classic characters, familiar episodic structure, and retro space adventure energy, it's also subtly rewriting parts of Trek canon that fans have taken for granted for decades. One of the most unexpected changes is how Strange New Worlds has reshaped the original series' most iconic running joke, "Red shirts always die." For years, the phrase has been pop culture shorthand for disposable characters doomed to perish the moment they step off the transporter pad. But Strange New Worlds doesn't just avoid killing its supporting cast for cheap laughs, it reinvents the entire idea of expendable crew members. In doing so, it turns a half-century-old meta joke into a meaningful, character-driven narrative philosophy. The original red shirt trope was never just about humor. To understand why this shift matters, it's worth looking at how the trope originated. In the original series, red uniformed security officers often accompanied Kirk, Spock, and McCoy on away missions, serving as cannon fodder to raise dramatic stakes without harming major characters. Fans noticed the pattern, turned it into a meme long before memes existed, and by the 1980s, red shirt death had become a cornerstone of Trek comedy. It represented something broader about televised sci-fi, high adventure, constant danger, and the idea that nameless extras existed to be dramatically vaporized, stabbed, or crushed by foam rocks. It was funny, morbid, and strangely beloved, but it also signaled a harsh truth about TOS. Character deaths were rarely personal. Security staff weren't people, they were narrative tools. Strange New Worlds makes every crew member count. Strange New Worlds flips that philosophy. Even when it introduces one-off characters or background officers, it treats them like fully realized members of Starfleet. Instead of presenting security personnel as expendable, the show humanizes them. Chief among the examples is Lieutenant Erica Ortegas, a character who, in TOS-era logic, might have been predictably killed off early to signal danger. Instead, she's a charismatic pilot with personality, aspirations, trauma, humor, and real plot relevance. Her near-death experiences, whether crash-landing shuttles, navigating unknown anomalies, or facing war flashbacks, are character arcs, not cheap body count moments. The show doesn't exist just to avoid redshirt deaths. It refuses to treat any crew member like background furniture. The Enterprise feels like a functioning organization, not a set of action figures. The security team is no longer disposable. The clearest contrast with TOS comes through LT, Lon Noonien Singh. As chief of security, she leads the kind of away missions that would have been death sentences for her department in 1966. Yet Strange New Worlds handles conflict differently. Lon survives danger by being highly competent. Her team isn't wiped out for shock value. Losses, when they occur, are emotionally complex. Rather than reinforcing the idea that security exists solely to die, the series frames the role as crucial, heroic, and strategic. Where TOS used security deaths to escalate tension, Strange New Worlds uses character development. Death still happens, but with meaning. The show isn't afraid to kill characters. Hemmer's death, for instance, was a major emotional moment, but unlike a classic redshirt death, it wasn't a punchline. It served story purpose, reflected his philosophy, and deeply impacted the crew. His sacrifice was meaningful, not random. Where TOS deaths often existed only to prove the planet was dangerous, Hemmer's death felt like a thematic turning point, and it shaped Uhura's journey. In Strange New Worlds, death isn't disposable. It's personal, mourned, and narratively respected. Even lower-tier characters have emotional stakes. Notice how even minor Enterprise personnel are treated. Character type TOS approach SMW approach. Background security killed without names given arcs and personality. New crew introductions foreshadowed death's growth and ongoing roles. Supporting specialists, plot devices, emotional and thematic value. Scenes in sickbay, engineering, and the bridge often highlight characters the camera would barely acknowledge in TOS. They're part of a larger community, not interchangeable targets. The show's ensemble structure reinforces this. Strange New Worlds rotates lead characters rather than relegating most of the crew to silence while Kirk steals the spotlight. Everyone matters, creatively and emotionally. Modern storytelling demands a shift. This evolution isn't just philosophical, it's reflective of modern television culture. Audiences no longer respond to body count drama the way they did in the 1960s. Killing characters arbitrarily can feel cheap or manipulative, especially in serialized world building. Modern viewers want emotional continuity, character development, a universe that feels lived in, deaths that carry consequences. Strange New Worlds recognizes this shift and adapts accordingly. It's not just updating a trope, it's updating the ethics of storytelling. Red shirts don't die, but trauma and stakes do. Strange New Worlds preserves the danger of space exploration, but instead of proving risk through meaningless deaths, the show uses psychological stakes, Pike's accident for knowledge, Lon's trauma, moral stakes, Spock's identity conflict, war legacies, consequential sacrifice, Hemmer, relationship fractures, alternate timelines. Danger isn't minimized, it's made deeper. Instead of saying people die, the show says people live with consequences. That shift is far more emotionally mature. A meta reversal. The joke is now about survival. Ironically, by refusing to kill off crew members casually, Strange New Worlds creates a new, inverted meta joke. This is the TOS era, yet nobody is dying the way they're supposed to. Fans familiar with the franchise expect red shirts to drop like flies. The show plays on that expectation by subverting it repeatedly. Every tense-away mission becomes a quiet commentary on how far Trek has evolved. Instead of laughing at expendable characters, the audience now fears losing characters they love, exactly what television should make us feel. The philosophy has shifted from spectacle to humanity. The transformation comes down to a fundamental ethos. Era purpose of crew death. TOS raise stakes through expendability. SNW raise stakes through human connection. Star Trek has always been about the dignity of exploration and the value of life. Strange New Worlds does not just honor that theme, it embodies it more authentically than TOS could within the constraints of 1960s narrative structure. The Federation's future matters because the people building it matter. Conclusion. Strange New Worlds didn't erase the joke, it evolved it. Strange New Worlds isn't rewriting history or erasing the past, it's reframing one of Star Trek's most famous cultural legacies through a modern lens. The red shirt trope was never malicious, but it reflected an era of storytelling where characters existed to serve plot, not theme. Today, Star Trek has grown up. Red shirts aren't punchlines. Security officers aren't expendable. Death is meaningful, not mechanical. The Enterprise is a community, not a casualty machine. Strange New Worlds may be set before the original series, but emotionally and narratively, it's light years ahead. The joke isn't that red shirts die. The joke is that now, they finally get to live. If you'd like, I can also provide SEO-optimized headers, version written as a YouTube script, shortened version for social media, a follow-up article on another TOS trope SNW changed. Just let me know. Serve plot, not theme. Today, Star Trek has grown up. Red shirts aren't punchlines. Security officers aren't expendable. Death is meaningful, not mechanical. The Enterprise is a community, not a casualty machine.